Thank you, Dr. Chadwell, for your warm and kind introduction. Provost Clable, governors of the board, Dean Sarkar, faculty, alumni, students, families, and friends, good afternoon. Congratulations, class of 2024, warrior doctors. Wow. You realize the exhilaration being felt by the 38 trillion cells that compose each one of you. The cell-to-cell communication through the porosome on the information generated by 6 feet of DNA in each of your cells, when linearly arranged end to end, would span more than 60 times the 93 million miles between the sun and the earth.
In 1996, Professor Bhanu Jena discovered the porosome, the secretory machinery in cells. His optimization of atomic force microscopy for nanoscale imaging of cellular structure led to this amazing discovery. It has revealed the molecular mechanism that underpins the secretory process that is involved in cell-to-cell communication. Many diseases such as cystic fibrosis, diabetes, and neurological disorders, and even cancers, result from defects in this secretory process. This groundbreaking discovery offers new therapies to treat such diseases, offering new hope to countless millions around the globe. Professor Jena began this extraordinary journey on November 1st, 1955, when he was born in Jajpur, a small town near his ancestral village of Thalia in Odisha, India. He is the eldest of 4 children, born to Manju Prova Mohapatra and Professor Dr. Prafulla Kumar Jena. His early childhood was spent in the remote villages of Odisha under the care of his grandparents, Dr. Brajakishore Jena and Tilottama Jena. His grandfather, a devoted physician, chose to serve rural communities during both pre- and post-independent India, leaving a lasting impression on young Bhanu. These formative years, surrounded by nature and compassionate caregivers, instilled in him a deep sense of curiosity and empathy. At the age of 4, Dr. Jena began attending a village school, though he was more drawn to the wonders of nature than the classroom. Fascinated by mimosa plants and dragonflies, he found magic in the natural world, a fascination that would later shape his scientific pursuits. In 1960, following his father's return from doctoral studies at the University of British Columbia in Canada, the family relocated to Bombay, where Dr. Jena began his formal schooling. His mother, a gifted Odishi dancer, musician, and culinary artist, became his first mentor, nurturing his academic discipline and artistic sensibilities. Her influence fostered his lifelong love for science, music, and cooking. Dr. Jena continued his education in Bombay and later in Banaras, where his father served as head and professor of metallurgical engineering at Banaras Hindu University. Summers were spent in Thalia, immersed in village life, fishing, foraging, and observing nature. These experiences, coupled with conversations about science with his father, laid the foundation for his future career. His first scientific experiment at age 10 involved observing sea sponges in a jar of seawater. The regenerative behavior of the sponge fragments sparked his interest in cellular communication and regeneration, themes that would later emerge in his research. Inspired by the work of Nobel laureate Professor Dr. Hargovind Khurana, a close family friend, Dr. Jena pursued a career in cellular and molecular biology. He earned his Bachelor of Science from BJB College and his Master of Science from Utkal University in Bhubaneswar, Odisha in 1978. He began his academic career as a lecturer in the Department of Zoology at Utkal University. In 1979, Dr. Jena married Meenakshi, his lifelong partner. Their shared commitment to academia led them to the United States in 1982, where Dr. Jena pursued his doctoral studies in zoology at Iowa State University. Meenakshi completed her undergraduate degree in computer science and later earned an MBA from the same institution. Dr. Jena's postdoctoral work at Yale University School of Medicine under Professor James D. Jameson introduced him to renowned scientists, Professor George E. Palade and Professor Günther Blobel. These mentors profoundly influenced his scientific trajectory. A pivotal moment came in Dr. Jena's career in 1996 with the discovery of the porosome, a cup-shaped structure at the cell plasma membrane responsible for secretion. Using atomic force microscopy, Dr. Jena and his team visualized porosomes in live cells, revolutionizing the understanding of cellular secretion. Porosomes were found to be universal nanomachines composed of nearly 30 proteins essential for the regulated release of cellular contents. His research demonstrated that mutations or disruptions in porosome proteins, such as CFTR in cystic fibrosis, or porosome proteins impacted by beta amyloid in Alzheimer's, impaired cellular secretion. These findings have led to the development of therapeutic strategies targeting secretory defects in various diseases. Dr. Bhanu Jena's contributions to cell biology have had a profound impact on human health and disease. His journey from a curious child in rural India to a pioneering scientist reflects a life dedicated to discovery, mentorship, and the betterment of humanity.
I can go back to when I was about 4 or 5 years old, because I grew up, my childhood was with my grandparents, because my father was in Canada doing his studies, and I was with my grandparents. My grandfather was a surgeon who actually practiced medicine in villages in India. So I traveled, so I was with my grandparents, and I learned a lot from them. They were very kind. Of course, grandparents are always very affectionate, but he was also very disciplined himself as a surgeon. So I learned a lot from him and my grandma. We used to spend a lot of time collecting mushrooms and vegetables, and she would teach me poetry and other things in Odisha, where I grew up. And also, I would say my mom, who was with them, taking care of me and my sister at that time. We were 4 siblings, but only me and my sister, who was younger, who has passed away, were there. My mom was, I would say, my greatest teacher, because she taught me how to add, subtract, multiply, and read me stories, bedtime stories, and other things. So she is one of my best teachers, early teachers, I would say, including my grandpa and grandma. Growing up in high school and in college, I was exposed to a lot of academics. My father was a professor at Bhubaneswar University. Before that, he was director of a research program at Power Atomic Research. And so we got to meet so many brilliant people that would visit our home. And Dad's close friend was Hargovind Khurana, one of the close friends' dads, when he was in British Columbia. And so they met there and became very close friends. So I got to know a lot about Khurana and his works, which he did in the early 60s And I still remember in 1968, Professor Corona, who at that time was in University of Wisconsin, received the Nobel Prize in Physiology Medicine. Dad came and told me, it was in October, that my friend just received a Nobel Prize in Physiology of Medicine. And so he was always my academic dad, and Corona and others, academic heroes. Yeah, he grew up in villages in Odisha, and I still remember as a child, as a kindergartner, I never liked sitting inside the classroom, so I would actually leave the classroom, sort of sneak away, and in the backyard of the school there was these mimosa plants, and I was amazed as to how they shut themselves close when you touch, and I thought they were talking with me, and I would spend hours touching them one by one, and they're closing their leaves, and so that was fascinating. But I never knew that I would go into science. I never knew. So that was nature, essentially. But in terms of science, what got me excited was, I never had a chemistry kit or anything like a lot of people do. When I grew up in Bombay in my middle school years, we used to go out into the sea during low tide, and I used to collect shells and jellyfishes and things like that, and including different types of sponges. And I used to keep them in a little glass jar, and observe them. And it was interesting. I still remember very clearly that this sponge that I was trying to clean, I broke it into a couple of parts, and over several weeks I saw that, and I was devastated because I thought I killed the sponge. Yeah. And I just let it be there and watch it, and it came together. And I was surprised that if that happened to a sponge, when people we see that lose a leg or arm could actually regenerate those things. So that actually initiated my interest in understanding nature more deeply, and I think that was science. I would say that would be the first exposure I got as an experiment doing science as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, which was very exciting. Well, certainly the exposure that I got from my grandpa at a very early age. He was a surgeon. He was very dedicated, wanted to do things for society. And Dad was always excited about science. And he was a metallurgist as well as an electrochemist. That influenced me a lot. And so I met with so many intellectuals. But in school, I don't remember any particular teacher that excited me in terms of science, but I think nature itself. I think I always felt that restricted learning which we need, which now I realize is important. I was never in for restricted learning in sitting in class and reading. Right. I was always an outdoors person and wanted to learn from nature. Mm-hmm. So I would say, to be honest, nature was my teacher as I was growing up. But having said that, I think another attribute that I would give was when you are going through education in life, there are certain things that you see in textbooks that you question. And I had that feeling about cell secretion. We were taught during cell secretion, the secretory vesicles completely merge with the plasma membrane to release their contents. And I felt that if you look at these images, where the cells have already secreted, they have partially empty vesicles, which did not correlate with the secretory mechanism that was at that time in textbooks. And that, I think, started the question as to why that is the case. If that's the principle of cell secretion, it doesn't. It should not have partially empty vesicles. Yeah, and those are some of the things that drove me to question existing dogmatic views. And to make a long story, throughout my life, I tried to work on this project and finally were able to find the structure that we have now, the porosome structure, that allows us to understand how secretion takes place in cells, in all cells. Initially, I thought I would be teaching the next generation. I was a lecturer for 4 years before I came to the United States on a scholarship. And when I came to the United States, I had the opportunity actually to choose my own, even for my doctoral program, my own project with Professor Joel Abramowitz, who was then a very young starting assistant professor at Iowa State. So he had much influence in terms of my initial foray into real research in the United States. And then I came back to the thought I always had about cell secretion after I finished my doctoral work. And I was fortunate to get a fellowship to work with Professor Jim Jameson, who was one of George Palade's, the father of modern cell biology. One of his students was the chairman of the department at Yale Medical School. And through Jim, I came to know Professor Palade himself, as well as Professor Gunter Blobel, who became a very long-time friend, and to discuss this exact question I had since childhood, that when during cell secretion, how is the cell able to release a portion of the content that is present in vesicles without, if the dogmatic view was that they completely merge with the plasma membrane. And this discussion I had with Dr. Palade and Professor Palade and Professor Blobel, and got a lot of ideas and finally was able to solve it. So they had huge impact on my career, working and discussing with them about the science. So that had a lot of impact. So I'm very grateful to those two individuals who have since passed away. Professor Blobel and passed away recently, 2018. And so that was a big turning point in my life, coming in close contact with these individuals. Well, I feel that any scientist, most scientists actually keep abreast of their own field. But I also strongly feel that when you're doing science, you should also know what's going around in other areas of science. When I say other areas, I'm talking about interdisciplinary sciences. So you have to know the developments that are taking place in physics and chemistry, the use of mathematics, and of course, now computational and now AI. So if you're abreast of the technologies that develop, you can use those technologies to answer some of the fundamental questions that you may have, and to keep up with those type of knowledge of those new technologies is critical. And so I was lucky that I had the opportunity to access the atomic force microscope. When I was at Yale, I started my lab. We had access to the atomic force microscope, which was a force spectroscope that had just been developed. In fact, the scanning tunneling microscope received the Nobel Prize to Gerd Binning, Henry Rohrer in 1986.
They were at the IBM in Zurich, and I knew about that. And as soon as I got hold of one of those microscopes, which is a force spectroscope, we utilized that, and we were able to image cellular structures in live cell structures in buffer at nanometer resolution. And the question we asked was very simple. If the vesicle is not merging completely with the plasma membrane, it is interacting with some structure at the cell plasma membrane that allows for the vesicle not to completely merge, but fuse temporarily and release portion of the secretory vesicle contents. And so using the atomic force microscope, we were able to accomplish that and see the structure in dynamics, in real time and in motion. It would dilate and have secretory vesicles release their substances and then close. And that was the aha moment of science. For so many years that I've been thinking that there is a structure. For the first time, we were able to see that. And that actually was magical. Let's put it that way. You see a new cellular structure for the first time. That was a great moment. And one get very emotional because it was suggested from experimental, but no one had seen it, yeah. And seeing is believing. And then we went on not only to see that structure. Initially, we thought that structure was an artifact, and then when we did many experiments, we could see in all different types of cells, and then finally we could see it using electron microscopy, which was a conventional tool, and also solution X-rays. And the neurons. That was totally magical moment to see that new structure. From then onwards, many students worked on the project. Many collaborators worked on it. It opened the door to trying to understand at the molecular level the secretory process, and many exciting aspects of cell secretion were revealed, and that was exciting. So, I grew up in an academic family. All my life I have been an academician. I never thought that I would be able to translate discoveries and inventions. So I give a lot of credit to people that are business people that realized the importance of this. It came into textbooks, but I never thought that it was going to be translated. There are quite a few scientists who are brilliant, and they have taken their discoveries immediately into translation. I didn't have that opportunity nor the depth to do that. But when people came to me and said, well, this is what can be done to save lives, and this is how we can do it, I said, well, I'm happy to help you do that. And so it turned out that this structure, which is able to release substances from the cell, essentially the body is either 30 trillion cells communicating with each other, neurons, for example, 1 million miles of them interacting. If that interaction is disrupted, in other words, the porosome structure or its function is impaired, then you have disease. And that actually impacted quite a bit, and I started thinking about it. But the company that was formed by these individuals, and I was included in that as a co-founder, allowed us to now utilize that and translate it. And we found that if you mutate or you impact any of those 30 proteins that form the porosome complex, then you can have a defective secretory function that happens in several diseases, such as cystic fibrosis and Alzheimer's. And now we are able to address them. So I'm very happy that, yes, not only one could treat patients, but also there is a pathway to a cure for some of these diseases, which we're able to achieve, and that I think is to me a great joy, because being a scientist and discovering something, and that discovery is now being translated for human good, is within a lifetime, is to me is tremendous. In the last 3, 4, 5 years, clearly we have seen the impact it's had on cystic fibrosis, which is a devastating disease, where the lung epithelia is unable to secrete mucus and the right viscosity and content. We are able to now overcome that using porosome reconstitution, and we just received a few months back orphan drug approval by the FDA. Similarly, in Alzheimer's, which is a devastating disease that impacts more than around 55 million people globally and about 6 million people in the United States, and it's growing very rapidly, we are able to overcome, even not only in animal studies but in organoid studies, and reverse that effect. That to me is priceless. And I think that's the biggest prize one could have in life, that if your work can positively impact society. I think that's where I feel my contribution is worthwhile in life, being a scientist. But one has to also realize that, therefore, supporting fundamental research by society is important. It's fundamental science that was funded by NIH or the NSF has been critical. And therefore, I feel that it needs for the next generation to move forward, for the U.S. or the global scientific progress to be made to impact positively society has to be provided to the next generation. So that's how strongly I feel fundamental research should be supported. We were married more than 45 years ago. And at that time in India, 2 families knew each other, so we came to know each other, and and then we were. So it was a very quick process. We never dated for years. We knew for a couple of years each other. We used to, and then finally we got married with the blessings of the entire family. In Indian marriages those days, even today, in many ways, both families bless the bride and bridegroom, and we were accepted to both families. So that's how you may call it an arranged marriage. That's how it was. And I have been extremely fortunate to have my partner who has been very supportive, and she's also an academician herself. She's in business as well as in computer science. And she has been very supportive. And that also helped my career, that her support and helped my career. And we support each other. And I think that's what it should be, the husband and wife support each other for their careers. So we had a great run. Well, my philosophy always in life is, when you get up in the morning, you look back and you say, I want to do something better than what I did yesterday. So, and life is a journey for everyone. Everyone is going to die. If you're born, that's the only real thing that's going to happen, is you're going to pass away. And in life, you want to do the most impactful, positive things that impact not only you, your family, but the entire humanity. And so what I would, I've been involved in many different projects with brilliant people. Food security, energy security, drug availability, or health security. These are some of the things that I am working on with many of my friends. We have started a foundation for the endowment of supporting research in the arts and sciences. And we have the support and involvement of many individuals. And I think that is something that I'm very much wanting to devote my rest of my life into that, to make sure that the next generation will get the opportunity to do things that I got. And so I still keep teaching and training students. I have an active lab. I also help others set up institutes, and I'm involved in institution building and globally. So these are some of the things that I continue to do, and I love to do them. And in fact, I do them, essentially it has become a hobby. So when I go and do science, I'm still as excited to be in the lab, although I'm unable to do so much by my own hand, which I love to do, but when I get a chance, I do want to sit at the desk, at the bench, and do pipetting and do science. So that's how I spend my time, involved and engaged in those projects. Well, I think every generation, I personally feel, gets more intelligent and smarter. But I think the two criteria that I always promote is that always do what you love to do, whether it's science, the music, arts, whatever you feel like. Give it 100% of your effort. And the second thing is be true to yourself and work hard. And those are the things that I would say scientists. So scientists are inquisitive people. I mean, whether it's our past generation, this generation, they are curious. Actually, human beings are curious. And when you get really curious, then you turn into a scientist. But I think to have enjoyable life doing what you love to do, I think you have to take your passion as a hobby, and then you enjoy it. But also work hard. That's what I would say.